Students, today we are going to discuss a lesson, Lost Spring. It is written by Anees Jung. So, before going to the textbook, first let us go for introduction. Lost Spring. Here the author describes the miserable condition of poor people, or we can say also refugees, who live in slums. इस कहानी में आप ये देखेंगे कि आथर जो वो बयान करता है उन गरीबों की, उन रिफ्यूजियों की कहानी, उनकी जिंदगी जो स्लम्स में रहते हैं, यानी जो बिल्कुल वर्स्ट एरियाज और डर्टी एरियाज या गंदे इलाकों में रहते हैं, उनकी हालत पर कुछ तबसरा करती है the author, namely Anees Jung. According to the author, these people who live in slums, they work hard in dirty conditions. पहला चीज, और दूसरा चीज है their children are deprived of education. उनके बच्चे जो होते हैं वो तालीम से महरूम रहते हैं. क्यों महरूम रहते हैं? बिकॉज द पेरेंट्स हैव नॉट सच इनकम टू प्रोवाइड देम एजुकेशन. ये बच्चे जो उनके होते हैं, यानी जो स्लम्स में रहते हैं, वो हमेशा तालीम से महरूम रहते हैं. क्यों महरूम रहते हैं? क्योंकि उनके पेरेंट्स के पास उतनी आमदनी नहीं होती है, उतने पैसे नहीं होते हैं कि वो अपने बच्चों को तालीम दे सके. और तीसरा चीज जो है, so in order to describe these things, the author here describes here the refugees who come from who came from Bangladesh and settled in Simapuri in Delhi. तो ऑथर जो है वो हमें यहां पर डिस्क्राइब करता है कंडीशन ऑफ रिफ्यूजीज हु केम फ्रॉम बांग्लादेश, हाउ दे केम फ्रॉम बांग्लादेश, बिकॉज दे वर लिव in the midst of fields in Bangladesh. In Bangladesh. So the storm and the flood swept away their fields. क्या हुआ कि जो फील्ड्स उनके थे वो सैलाब के नजर हो गए एंड continuously they were become the victim of this flood. So they left their place Bangladesh and came to India, where they settled at Simapuri, which is in the outskirts of, or we can say in the outside, on the boundary of Delhi, the capital of India. So here the author now describes the story of these refugees, and the story represents here the character here. His name is Sahib Alam. He is a boy. So the author here represents the story, here describes the story of this, and the story, and Sahib, one of the boy who represents these Bangladeshi people, these refugees who are now live in Simapuri in Delhi. So let us go to the text and see what happens there and how they lived their life and what is their lifestyle as refugees, as living in slums. So now page first 13, the author asks to somebody, why do you do this? I ask Sahib, whom I encounter every morning scrounging for gold in the garbage dumps of my neighborhood. So, who encounter means to meet me unexpectedly, and scrounge means search. So, the author asks Sahib, one of the boy who was always searching gold on the garbage, means waste material, waste food or waste material, and what he searches, he was searching for gold. Sahib left his home long ago, set amidst of green field of Dhaka. His home is not even a distant memory. There were many storms that swept away their fields and homes. His mother tells him that is why they left looking for gold in the big city where he now lives in. So in this para, the author says that how they left their birthplaces, how they left their own, their permanent places because of the floods, and they were living. Where they living? They were living in the midst of the Bangladesh, that is Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh. So mother told her everything. I have nothing else to do, he mutters. Muttering actually means to speak in a quiet voice. तो उसने कहा, I have nothing else to do, he mutters, looking away. Go to school, I say glibly. Glibly कहते हैं persuadingly, in a manner of motivation. So the author asked him in a very good manner, why don't you go to school? And go to school, I say, there is no school in my neighborhood. When they build one, I will go. So Sahib's reply was that there is no school in his neighborhood. When there is a school, I will go. So after this, in page 14, if I start a school, will you come? I ask, half joking. Yes, he says, smiling broadly. So the author told him, if I start a school, will you come? So he says, he smiled broadly, yes, I will come. A few days later, when the author comes again to his this place, so he met their Sahib, and the Sahib asks him, is your school ready? I take longer to build a school. It take longer to build a school. I say, embrace it. But the first question was from Sahib, whether you build a school or not. And the author says, I felt ashamed, embarrassed, ashamed, because I was joking him at that time. So after this, what happened is, after months knowing him, I asked him his name, Sahib Alam. He told, and she also told him, what is meant by Sahib Alam. He says that the Lord of the universe. So if he knew its meaning, and some then represents, he roams the streets with his friends, an army of barefoot boys who appear like the morning birds and disappear at noon. So Sahib was with his other friends, and all of them were barefooted, and the author says that over the months I have come to recognize each of them. Why are not you wearing chappals? I asked one. My mother did not bring them down from the shelf, he answered simply. तो उसने कहा कि मेरी माँ हमें ये नहीं देना चाहती है, कि ये तस्वर नहीं देना चाहती है कि हमें ये, यानी वो अपनी जो हैसियत है उससे नीचे नहीं देनी चाहती है. So even she did, he will throw them off at Ed's mother, who is wearing shoes that do not match. When I comment on it, he shuffles his feet, says nothing. I want shoes, says a third boy, who has never owned a pair of all his. Traveling across the country, I have seen children walking barefooted. So the author says that traveling across the country, I have seen like these children, every child was barefooted. So it was their tradition. So they never wear shoes, they always walk barefooted. So after this, I remember a story. A man from Udipi once told me, as a younger boy, he would go to school past an old temple where his father was a priest. He would stop briefly at the temple and pray for a pair of shoes. 30 years later, I visited his town and the temple, which was now drowned in an air of desolation. In the backyard where lived the new priest, there were red and white plastic chairs. A young boy dressed in a grey uniform, wearing socks and shoes, arrived panting and threw his school bags on folding bed. Looking at the boy, I remembered the prayer another boy had made to the goddess when he had finally got a pair of shoes. So here the author actually gives us some description or a story about that once when she went to the temple, and there one boy, he was praying for his shoes, and after 30 years when she came back, and there came a boy who was panting कहते हैं breathing breathing quickly with short breaths, and the goddess had granted his prayer. Young boys like the son of the priest now wore shoes, but many others like the rag pickers in my neighborhood remain shoeless. लेकिन जो रैग पिकर्स होते हैं, रैग पिकर्स कहते हैं पर्सन गैदरिंग वेस्ट, वो कभी they are deprived of the shoes. And now my acquaintance with the barefoot rag picker. Acquaintance means acquaintance, a person who knows but not a close friend. तो एक्विटेंस एक्चुअली कहते हैं जिसको आप जानते हो लेकिन वो आपके साथ ज्यादा दोस्त नहीं होता है. सो माई एक्विटेंस विथ ए barefoot rag picker leads me to Simapuri, a place on the periphery of Delhi, yet miles away from it. So the author says, now I know a person who leads me to Simapuri, and he was a rag picker, and his name was Sahib, and she says that they live in Delhi periphery Simapuri, and it was on the periphery of Delhi. Periphery means out border of the Delhi, and those who live here or squatters means those who cannot who are not paying, who live but not pay any kind of rent. So she says that they were squatters who came from Bangladesh back in 1970. Sahib's family is among them. So Sahib, one of the boy, his family was also there. Simapuri was then a wilderness. It was a desert. There was nothing. And it was, so the author says that they have lived here for more than 30 years without an identity. So they here refers to these rag pickers, Bangladeshi people, and they lived there about 30 years, but yet they were not the citizens, but they have the ration cards. And if at the end of the day we can feed our families and go to bed without an aching stomach, we would rather live here than in fields that give us a grave. But they are satisfied. Why? They say that if we get the Delhi Delhi food, or we can live happily, then it is better than the Bangladeshi fields, because we were always there in a ruin. So after this, say a group of women in tattered saris. Tattered means torn saris, fields, and when I asked them why they left their beautiful land of green fields where they find food, they pitched their tents that became transit homes. Transit homes कहते हैं temporary homes. And why they live here? So where they find children grow up in them, becoming partners in survival. And survival in Simapuri means rag picking. Through the years it has acquired the proportions of a fine art. Garbage to them is a gold. So they told her that this garbage, it is for them gold, and it is their daily bread, a roof over their heads, even if it is a leaking roof, but for a child it is even more. I sometimes find a rupee, even a 10 rupees note. Sahib says his eyes lightening up. Lightening up means becomes bright. So becoming bright when I find sometimes a 10 rupees note and watching two young men dressed in white playing tennis. I like the game. He hunts content to which it's standing behind the fence. So again, when the author saw this Sahib, when he was watching the tennis game, I go inside when no one is around, and the gatekeeper permitted him to play there, to use the swing. Sahib too is wearing tennis shoes that looks very strange because this rich boy had given him, but this shoes, it was also it has holes. The first fact that they are discarded shoes of some rich boy, and then who has walked barefooted, even shoes with a hole is a dream come true. So the author says that once I saw this Sahib, he was outside the this tennis ground and I saw him with shoes. So it was a dream for him because somebody had given him the shoes, and then he says his way. This morning he also saw Sahib and on a to the milk booth. In his hand is a steel canister. I now work in a tea stall down the road. He says, pointing in the distance, I am paid rupees, 800 rupees, and all my meals. Does he like the job? I ask. His face, I see, has lost the carefree look. Carefree means cheerful. So जब मैंने उसको ये कहा कि क्या आप इससे मुतमईन हो, तो उसने क्या कहा कि और उसके चेहरे पर वो खुशी जाहिर नहीं हुई. क्यों नहीं हुई? क्योंकि उसने कहा कि नो डाउट वो उसके पास 800 रुपये आते थे, लेकिन वो कोई मास्टर नहीं है, बल्कि उसका मास्टर, उसका मालिक कोई अलग है. जब वो खुद मालिक बन जाएगा तो फिर इसका मतलब है कि he was not happy with this job, but now he was compelled to do so job. And this is the story about the Sahib, a red picker who lives as a refugee in Simapuri. And next time we will go another story, that is Mukesh, and he was a Bengal seller. So when the Mukesh insists on being his own master, I will be the motor mechanic. He announces, do you know anything about cars? I ask him. So, and again, what we see that what happens to him. So now there are some questions if you want to write it. So where from refugees came and why? Why they means refugees were barefooted. Whether the refugees are satisfied to live in Salem. And these are the questions, and you must keep it in mind and also write the answers of these questions. Thanks.